My name is Wes Simms, and I'm in the KUTX studio on the phone with a certain Canadian music journalist. I would like to ask you, sir, who are you?
Hello, Wes. I am Nardwuar the Human Serviette from Vancouver, British Columbia, Canada. I do a radio show on CITR, FM 102, Cable 102, Vancouver, British Columbia, Canada. As well, I also play in the bands The Evaporators and The Goblins, and I do interviews on my radio show. I take the audio for CITR and the video for YouTube.
Awesome. Narwhal, thank you for joining us on the phone from Vancouver. So right off the bat, I wanted to ask you, how did you get involved in the radio and music journalism?
I kind of gave it away all there, but I joined CITR Radio. I just joined the radio club at the University of British Columbia to eat my lunch in between classes, and then eventually I became hooked and I got a radio show. And now 31 years later, I'm still volunteering every week doing a radio show on CITR. So I guess initially it was, well, it is the University of BC radio show, but also what prompted me to initially join that, totally get involved, was involved with Student Congress, Student Council in high school, and also my mom was into history, so I loved going to historical meetings that she attended, the North Shore Historical Society. So I was interested a bit in history, and I was part of the music scene in Vancouver. I mentioned I played in a band, and I also put on gigs, so it was kind of natural that I gravitated towards CITR radio, which is completely non-commercial. All the volunteers are non-paid, and it's completely funded by the students.
Awesome. So were you putting on shows and playing in the band before you joined the radio station?
Yes, believe it or not, I think the first practice for my band, The Evaporators, when I was in high school on February the 26th, around 1986, and then eventually we practiced for the variety night at our high school as The Evaporators, and we performed two songs, the Sonics doing Shot Down and the Cramps doing Human Fly, Nardwuar the Human Serviette. And that was the beginning of my band. But our official gig probably wasn't until, I think, the Psycho 60s Garage Festival, which was September 1986.
Wow. Okay, so what year did you start at
And
the
you can
station?
see that era of the Evaporators if you want, Wes. If you go to YouTube and type in the Evaporators 1987, and you can see what we were like back then.
Awesome. Yeah, I'll check that out. So in an old archived video that is from 1988 that you recently put on Instagram, you were asked if you were what you're going to do when you got out of university, and you said that your dad wanted you to be an engineer. So I was wondering if you were actually dead set on trying to be an engineer, or did you know, like, deep down all along that you wanted to be a music journalist?
Oh, I tried. I tried really hard, and I failed. So I had no idea, but I wasn't good enough to be an engineer. I would love to be an engineer, but I wasn't good enough.
Mm-hmm.
But I tried. So I'm kind of too dumb to quit. I'm still doing my radio show. It kind of takes me to find out, you failed. You cannot be an engineer. In other words, I did not know ahead of time. I failed, and then I realized I guess I wouldn't be an engineer. But it took me to having to fail to find out that I wouldn't be an engineer.
Mm-hmm. But I'm sure you're happy with how things turned out, right?
Well, I'm still trying. I'm still trying to rocket to the top. I'm still trying to get to the top of the rock pile.
Mm-hmm.
In fact, I think I won't feel like I've made it or I've even made some headway until I get a Barack Obama interview. He came to Vancouver, British Columbia, Canada.
Mm-hmm.
I think about a week ago, and I tried to get an interview, but no luck. So the day I will get an interview, somebody's like, "Oh, Nardwuar, we'll give you an interview," I kind of feel like I've made it. So it is still a long way to go.
Hopefully you'll be able to get that. Speaking of interviews that you still want to get, I was wondering if you've given up on the Neil Young interview, if you're still trying, or is there anybody else that you're still reaching after?
I've given up on that. I
Oh,
tried so hard. Like I've met him a couple times. I think I've given up. I guess if I saw him, I would try. But I've pretty much given up. But I would say, like regarding not getting the interview with like Barack Obama, etc. I'm still appreciative every time I wake up in the morning and my heart is beating and there is a breath. So I am happy I've made it this far. So to
mhm.
answer your question, yes, I am happy of the interviews that I've done and the stuff that I've done, very much so. Like, thank God I'm still going. I'm still in the game.
Of course, yeah. Um, so
And Neil is still in the game too, isn't he?
yeah, yeah, still kicking it. Um, so I was wondering, where did your tradition of giving gifts and digging really deep about the interviewees originate from?
Well, just like we are listening to KVRX 91.7, The Green Onion Show with Wes, right? With Wes,
Yeah.
right?
Yes,
With
sir.
Wes. It's located at the University of
Austin,
Austin. And I did my show on
Texas.
CITR at the University of British Columbia, the University of BC on CITR radio. And bands would come in to my studio, to the studio of CITR, and I would do interviews with them. And oftentimes I would go into the record library, I would pull out a whole bunch of records, and I would say, what do you think about those records? As time progressed, bands wouldn't come into CITR, so I would have to bring those records to the people. And a lot of times people wanted to keep the records, so I just gave it to them. So that's kind of how that all began. And as for doing research, hanging around CITR radio, I remember a guy interviewing Nitzer Ebb. Do you remember the band Nitzer Ebb?
I don't.
I think they're still kicking. They're like an electronic band, but I remember him interviewing the band and him having a book, and I was like, "What is the book for? What is it?" He's like, "Shut up! I'm using the book to do the interview." Like, so he took it very seriously. So I was like, "Oh, I gotta take it seriously." So that made me kind of up my skills to try to match this other DJ that was interviewing Nitzer. But I think in general, people at CITR radio in Vancouver, people at KVRX radio in Austin, people in college radio care. Like they care. Whereas commercial radio, I don't think they care at all. So we care. So I think college radio cares. So that's the reason that every interview you do, you want to make sure everything is perfect. Like even talking to me, Wes, you wanted to make sure that this is recording properly.
Yes, sir. Of course I did.
Like you cared. You cared where other people okay, So I think that kind of all goes back to college radio is like me wanting to do a good job because other DJs have done a good job, and also me wanting to do the research because when a lot of bands came into CITR, they were honored to like see all the records. I thought I'll bring the records to them, so that's how it all began.
Awesome. Yeah, no, I definitely think that college radio is a great place and it's full of DJs who really care and a lot of diverse music is played and that's why I've enjoyed it so much and that's how I ended up talking to you today.
Well, and I appreciate you saying that because I think college radio is also good because people give their honest opinion. Like many times, people have come up to me and said, like, "You suck," and I was like, "Well, how can I improve myself?" And they were like, "Well, you could do that." So, like, I get valuable feedback. Remember, your friends tell you what's wrong with you. Your enemies let you rot in hell. So when people phone in or email to CITR, I like take their opinions legitimately, and I try to respond to them. I love being, questioned, or I love being on your toes at college radio. I love that.
Mhm. Yeah. Um so on to the next question. After watching the interviews that you did with Blur and Henry Rollins, I always wondered how it is that you handle those situations when your interviewees are being difficult and what is going on through your head in those moments.
Well, nowadays it's pretty easy because there is always a phone around. But in those instances, there was no phone around. There was a pre-internet, so you could be like live streaming the interview. But
Mhm.
as long as the camera is filming the interview, I am happy. I'm happy. I feel safe. If the person really gets crazy, maybe I'll run away. But as long as the camera is filming interview, so I felt during those interviews that the camera was filming, I was safe. The camera was catching everything. I guess if I really felt danger, I would like run away and I'll like report to the police. And I'm urging people, if you're filming something and you feel really bad, maybe run away and report it to the police. But generally, if the camera is running, you are okay. So the camera was running. That's why I felt safe.
I'm glad. Yeah, you always seem really composed in those situations. So props to you for that. I don't know if I would be able to hold my ground like that, but um,
Well, also, you did this work, Wes, to interview me, Nardwuar the Human Serviette. You wanted to make sure that this recorded properly. I'm the same way for like Blur, Henry Rollins. I've done this work. I'm not going to turn around and leave.
hmm
I want to finish the interview. So as long as it's being recorded properly and being documented, I feel safe. Continue on with it. Don't turn around. So that's why I continued and plowed on.
Awesome. So I was wondering, where did your love of music come from? Did you like, was there anything specific from your childhood that sparked your interest?
Well, I guess just being involved with student council, the student congress in high school. I was president of the student congress, so I was in charge of organizing dances for my high school. For my, actually people would come out and see rock and roll bands, so people would give me suggestions. So that's how I found out about music. And actually, that's how I found out about local music. Like people would come up to me and get the punk band, DOA, or an amazing pop band, the Pointed Sticks. And I would try to get those bands. It wouldn't work out because maybe a lot of times they had broken up. Like in the case of the Pointed Sticks, they had like broken up, but a splinter band of them had started called the Frank Five. So I got them to perform at our high school. So I guess because I didn't know anything, I would always ask people, what band should we get? What band should we get? And I think that's kind of basically how people should function. When you don't know something, that's good. That's why I keep doing interviews, because there's always another interview to do, but there's always something to like find the information. So yeah, I still don't know a lot about music, but all my music knowledge came from others. Everything I've done has been done before.
Oh, I don't know about that, but so we know that you've had your radio show for 31 years right now. Um, so has it always been at the same time, and how has your show changed since the beginning?
My show used to be 2:30 to 3 on Fridays, and then it was moved to 3:30 to 5. At first, I only played music, but then there was a whole bunch of records thrown everywhere, so it's a lot easier for me to like play a song, talk, and then play another song, and that's pretty easy. I guess what's changed nowadays is like through Twitter, I can say, "Hey, I'm live on the air," and also I can tweet out a picture of the record of the band and I'm playing. That is amazing. Like it used to be, you would get no feedback when you're doing your radio show, maybe a couple weeks later, etc. But like for instance, I did an interview with Kurt Cobain of Nirvana. And
hmm
I played that on CITR radio. How many phone callers do you think I got for playing an interview when he was live, the next day with Kurt Cobain of Nirvana? They were like playing stadiums at the time I was talking to him.
hmm
How
Uh,
many calls do you think I got?
Zero?
Zero. I got no callers. So a lot of times people will say to me, "Oh, I did a video interview and I only got 2 likes on YouTube or 3 likes on Facebook." I was like, "That's more than I got for interviewing Kurt Cobain." So it's amazing now that I can be on a radio and I can go like tune into CITR. People can tune into CITR wherever they are in the world, and they can actually see. I can put a picture of like what I'm actually playing out there. So I think it's amazing how things have changed in the sense that like the entire world is at your fingertips, and I don't understand why more DJs don't say, "Hey, we are on the live, we are on the air right now," because I love getting the feedback.
Oh yeah, no, before my show every day, I'm always tweeting about it and stuff because I want as many people to listen as possible.
And also, if they miss your show, they can go to the website, or in CITR's case, you can go to iTunes and check out my show.
After the fact, it's recorded.
Yeah.
Awesome.
Or you can go to my website, nardwuar.com, and even check out some older interviews. I have like thousands of hours of radio shows going back like to 1987 up there.
hmm Um, so going off of that, what are the most important lessons about interviewing that you've learned since your first interview with Poisoned in 1985?
I would probably say the less you know, the better. Because it scares you into wanting to do an interview. I had a chance, I think in the year 2000, to speak to Snoop Doggy Dogg. And I was like, oh no, I'm not going to do it. I don't know anything about Snoop Doggy Dogg. Like, why am I going to do the interview? It's like Snoop. And then I thought, okay, I'm so scared. I got to do it, but what the hell? I don't know it. But I remembered my friend Diane had a red fox, the famous 1960s comedian doll. So I thought I would bring that to the interview to kind of like calm Snoop down and calm me down, to have some sort of interaction. I knew nothing to do. I was so scared. I brought a doll with me to the interview. It turned out Snoop loved the doll, wanted to buy the doll, and the bromance continues 19 years. 19 years later, I've done 10 interviews with Snoop Doggy Dogg. But the whole reason that happened is because I was afraid. So I think it's good to be afraid because it makes you find extra information that you wouldn't normally find. A lot of people might be like, oh, I'm talking to Snoop on Friday or whatever, not do any work and just show up and roll with the interview. I was like so scared. I wanted to make sure it went properly.
Mm-hmm. So for the most recent one, it seems like you guys, it wasn't scheduled. It seemed like you almost just were waiting for him to walk by and you're like, hey, can we get an interview? And he was like, I'll do it for you, Nardwuar. Was that the case or was it planned?
Exactly. You called it, Wes. And you were listening to Nardwuar the Human Serviette with Wes on KVRX 91.7, that Green Onion Show. Yes, when I talked to Snoop Doggy Dogg most recently, people can check it out on YouTube if they want. Snoop Dogg showed up at Fortune Sound Club, the owner of Fortune Sound Club. G-Man let me in there early, so Snoop walked up the door and I confronted him. I tried since January 8th to contact his people, no luck. So I was just there. The same thing when I talked to Little Uzi in December. The guy putting on the gig, David from Timber Productions, let me in the Coliseum, the giant Pacific Coliseum in Vancouver. And when Little Uzi was ready, or kind of was in his room, I had some communication with his people, but his people didn't say, oh, we'll get you into the gig. He saw me and the interview happened. So, yeah, I guess I've been lucky enough to know some of the club owners in Vancouver, whereas in the olden days, I might have been out in the snow waiting for Snoop Doggy Dogg.
Yeah, it seems like when you talked about trying to get the Nirvana interview originally, you told the people at the door that you were on the list and Dave Grohl put you on the list, but they were like, Nardwuar, you're not on the list. You've been around long enough to know that you're not on the list. So I was wondering, do you have more like street cred now, and do everybody lets you into stuff now?
What's very nice that G-Man let me in to talk to the Snoop the Fortune Sound Club, but as for getting interviews, I don't think I have got the street cred until I get to Obama interview. It's still hard to get interviews with people. Like an example of that is, I think a lot of musicians, rappers, etc., they get super famous without doing any interviews. Look at The Weeknd. He hardly did any interviews, and he got super famous. So I think a lot of people look at him like, oh, he didn't do any interviews. Why should I? So it's actually become harder to get interviews. But I am fortunate in Vancouver, at least some of the club owners know me, so they can it's kind of pathetic having this guy wait on the sidewalk outside their club in the snow. Just come in, and then it happens. And they know that I'm not going to do something crazy once I'm in there beforehand, before the star arrives, etc.
So I'm curious because you seem to be a very busy guy.
So to answer your question, Wes, I guess it's just as hard now as it was in the Dave Grohl Nirvana era. Remember, to get in a Nirvana interview, the only person that got me backstage was Courtney Love. She got me in there, but it was 2 days of work, so it's still hard to get the interviews. As DJ Khaled says, I'm still in the mud. But I love that. I love the fact that I'm still in the mud and still trying, because the minute you aren't worried or the minute you don't want to try is the minute you should quit.
That's good knowledge there. So I was wondering, because you're definitely a busy guy, and if I'm not mistaken, I think you're about to go on the air in Vancouver, right? So why did you agree to do this interview with me today?
Well, it's college radio. Why not?
Good answer.
Also, you played, Wes. You played the Royal Jesters.
I don't know anything about the Royal Jesters, Nardwuar.
I think you played them. They're on like a numero, like Uno or one of those numero comps. They were like
Oh,
sampled by
oh,
Kanye West.
oh my goodness. Oh my gosh. Is that was that Amnesty? Do you know what song Kanye samples it with?
One of the songs of Ye, his new records, was sampled by Kanye West, and it was the Royal Jesters, and they're from San Antonio. And you played it on your show.
I'm glad that you did the research on my
And you also have played like the Murlocs and the
Yes,
Nas.
yes sir. Yes I have.
And
Actually,
the Manwolves. You love the Manwolves.
you like the Manwolves?
The Manwolves.
Really? You should interview the Manwolves. I really like the Manwolves.
So I think college radio is amazing. It's totally amazing, and more people should get involved and do it. And it's always going to be there too. Like a lot of people listening might be like, "I don't have time to do college radio." Well, it's kind of like it'll always be there. It's like Ozzy Osbourne. It'll always be there. Commercial radio may die, but college radio will always be there. So raise a family and then do a show. I knew a guy, actually, that Nardwuars guy that I was talking about. Beppy, he did a show on CITR in the 1990s and then raised a family and returned to CITR. And now he has like his daughter helping him. It's
Wow.
amazing. CITR, college radio, is always there. And you learn so much. No, you don't get paid, but you can do whatever you want as long as it's not racist, sexist, or homophobic.
Mm-hmm, of course.
And especially in Canada, you can say every one of those 7 words, which we won't say right now, that you can say on the radio in the States. So it's totally amazing.
Yes, no, college radio is amazing, and it's such a good outlet for creativity, and especially with commercial radio, you can't play the same music that you can play in college radio, and I love having the freedom to pick whatever I want. So,
and that's why you're listening to Green Onions on KVRX Austin 91.7 FM, HD1 and HD2.
Yes, sir.
The Green Onions Show.
Wrapping up with the last few questions because I'm sure you have to get out of here because I think you have your show coming up. Is there anything you want to add to the people out there?
Well, I would just say if Nardwuar the Human Serviette can do it, anybody can do it. I'm like a teenage zit-rock loser that's no longer a teenager, but has been doing it since I was a teenager to inspire people. You might be like put off by my voice. You might not like my interviews or my music. That's great. If that inspires you to do something on your own, go and do it. Maybe just don't hurt me. And make sure you film everything too.
Why should people care about Nardwuar?
Again, I guess probably because if I can do it, anybody can do it. Like, I'm an inspiration for all those people kind of like, that? What? What the hell? Him? It's like most people can do what I do. It's just they are too lazy. They're too lazy to follow through on leads. Like I mentioned, like Snoop Doggy Dogg. Like, I was so scared, I went to my friend Diane's house. But if Diane is on the other side of town, a lot of people kind of like, oh, I'm not going to bother to go to her house, during rush hour to pick up the doll or whatever. But I do it. So you can do what I do. Just follow through on the leads. Just do it. It's really simple because most people can't be bothered.
Thank you so much for your time, Nardwuar.
Well, thank you, Wes, for appreciating Nardwuar the Human Serviette and having me on your show. I really appreciate it. Keep on rocking in the free world. And Wes, doot doot doot.
Doot doot.